This has got to stop. We cannot have a society that allows this to happen.
The house is wrecked, mate. The whole house is completely destroyed.
Nobody deserves any of this at all. They're just taking us back 50 years.
Our thoughts are with the victim. But let me be clear, Mr. Speaker. The acts of violence and arson that followed are totally unjustified.
You know, we all say this mustn't happen again, but it doesn't feel as if things are changing. And the idea of Elon Musk, for example, really whipping this up, the whole of the far right are doing this in a very systematic way.
Some of these platforms, including with very nefarious intent, have all this power, untrammeled power, without any responsibility and without any accountability.
The risks of regulating speech are actually quite high as well, and we need to be very, very careful not to go there.
The violence on the streets of Belfast has been described by one Northern Irish party leader as a race-based pogrom. Masked men going door to door, burning people out of their homes based on the colour of their skin. Children, including a 2-month-old baby, amongst those displaced. Here's SDLP leader Claire Hanna.
I know from colleagues who've been supporting residents who were put out of their houses, people from all parts of the world, including, by the way, people who were born and bred in Belfast but happened to have a different colour skin, being targeted. So it was entirely race-based, whatever the original intent of the protest was.
That's certainly not how Reform leader Nigel Farage sees it. He says MPs and the media are quite simply disconnected.
But the vast majority of those people who were out on the streets in Belfast last night were not far right, were not extremists, just really scared about what's going on in their communities and about the lack of government action.
The lack of action specifically on immigration. The riots followed a brutal attack on Monday night. The suspect charged with attempted murder is a Sudanese man given asylum 3 years ago. His victim is Stephen Ogilvie, whose family issued a statement today spelling out the deeply valuable contribution many migrants make to Britain, insisting they don't want their tragedy to be used to fuel hostility. Who or what fuelled last night's unrest was the main topic of conversation in Prime Minister's questions.
Turning to those horrific scenes in Belfast, too many times we see the same pattern. An appalling crime that makes us all feel immense pain and anger, and then extremists who exploit that grief and anger to spread hatred and violence, aided and abetted by social media barons like Elon Musk and their divisive algorithms.
We will crack down on anyone who's fuelling this division.
Just hours later, the government did crack down with a vow to update the Online Safety Act, some of which hasn't even come into force yet, obliging social media platforms to take quicker action to remove content inciting violence. Some worry governments across the globe are little match for tech titans, including soon-to-be trillionaire Elon Musk, watching proceedings from afar. Others, including the techies themselves, that the UK's commitment to freedom of speech is in doubt. Here's Wikipedia founder Jimmy Wales.
I am a big First Amendment type of person. I think freedom of expression is incredibly important. I think things that might cross the line here definitely would not cross the line in the US, and I think the US is more in the right in that instance.
He tells me the government shouldn't be banning social media for under 16s either, but instead working out why teenagers are unhappy. So is the internet the cause or symptom of our current woes, reflecting society's divisions or widening them? As new protests are threatened tonight, there seems little doubt of one thing: Britain is divided, and painfully so. Well, let's have a look at this report from Dan Whitehead now on how the last 24 hours have shaken Belfast.
As Belfast burned, a young family is bundled into a riot van, fleeing for their lives from their home, engulfed in flames. The morning after reveals the true extent of the damage, and the community torn by violence was clear to see.
I've lost a home, mate. 13 years out here, and that's gone. The house is wrecked, mate. The whole house is completely destroyed, from top to bottom.
What's your message to the people who have wrecked your property. And
There's not one of their own. One of their own. I understand they're all angry and all that, but I've just lost a home.
Boys just go to bed. I have 2 boys and 1 girl. It was a terrifying moment that I don't know how I could describe the moment the smoke was coming in. The alarm was on, constantly on. And I don't know what to tell the kid.
Nobody deserves any of this at all. They're just taking us back 50 years. Only they're putting a different name on it. They're putting racism on it. So, I don't know.
Described by leaders here as outright thuggery, all this was sparked by the attack on Stephen Ogilvie on Monday night. In court this morning, it emerged the victim in his 40s lost his left eye. In a statement, his family condemned the violence that followed. We want to make it absolutely clear, they said, that overnight unrest is not welcome and peaceful protest is the only way forward. The Sudanese suspect, Hadi Al-Udeid, appeared via video link at Belfast magistrates, refused bail. He'll be back in court next month. As the community recovers, condemnation from politicians.
People are rightly sickened by the horrific attack on Monday night in North Belfast. As you have just said, the man arrested has been in court in Belfast this morning and charged. We are united in calling for calm and determined to restore order, support the police and all those on the front line, and ensure that justice is done.
We know the suspect arrived in Northern Ireland via Dublin in 2023, receiving refugee status. The First Minister of Northern Ireland not wanting to be drawn on worries about migration over the border with Ireland.
Well, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there in terms of immigration. Of course, immigration needs to be controlled. Of course, we need to have control over borders. There's no country in the world that doesn't have control of their borders. But I want to see an immigration system that is both enforceable, that is human rights compliant, that is stands up to international standards, that is like something that everybody can understand. But I think that's a debate for another day.
What led to this destruction, the core reasons behind it, may well be far bigger than Monday night's attack alone. Regardless of that, Belfast is holding its breath with a warning to those intent on further violence. Anyone attacking any community can expect prison. The message from the judge in court today, one he said should be sent out loud and clear. Dan Whitehead, Sky News in Belfast.
Well, the former Education Secretary Gillian Keegan and former Green Party leader Caroline Lucas are here on the sofa throughout tonight's shows. Gillian, absolutely shocking scenes. Must have been terrifying to be caught up in it.
Yes, absolutely. All the people who were watching it, and then obviously we all saw the video, which you felt like you were there yourself. Horrific, and thank God that Matt and those other chaps actually went to help him, because he almost certainly would have been murdered. So that's the first thing. But then watching the horror unfold afterwards is very disturbing, because particularly when you see people's houses and also people's cars being stopped, what is it they're looking for, right? We don't have official papers or whatever, so what are they trying to do? What are they looking for? And you're left thinking it must be skin colour or the race or ethnicity of people.
The SDLP leader has said this is a race-based pogrom.
Yeah,
Caroline,
which is awful.
The PSNI has put out a statement saying that some social media users are posting address details online and sharing them through communication apps.
I don't understand how that can be allowed. I really don't. I mean, I think this really brings into focus the whole issue of just exactly the way social media is being used to incite violence. And according to the Online Harms Bill, this shouldn't be allowed to happen. So why isn't it being enforced? It feels like it's the Wild West out there. It feels like this idea that people are just going to try and burn you out of your home simply because of the colour of your skin. We are going back so many... It feels like centuries, but certainly decades.
It's actually centuries, I think.
It's terrifying.
And, I saw you just before we came on air, and, you looked really sort of upset by what you were digesting. Just tell us, how difficult it is to process what's going on.
Well, I just imagine myself being in one of those houses and just feeling the terror that you would feel as you see what's happening around you. You might have kids upstairs. I mean, this is literally life and death for people. People who have been contributing probably to society, who have a right to be here, And even if they didn't, this is not the way to go about trying to raise their issues. So I just think on a human level, you just can't help but just think how utterly terrifying it must be.
Janine, what kind of country are we becoming?
Well, not the one that we are. So I think this is not representative and reflective, I would like to think, of us as a country. We are very, on the whole, we're admired for being quite well integrated from other countries all around the world. And, you know, we have these tensions and they are being stoked up, and there are particular people who are trying to flame this and use this for political gain. And, you know, all it takes, you know, for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We must remember that, and good people everywhere need to stand up and say, this is not us, this is not what we do.
But there does seem like there's been complacency, doesn't there? I mean, I think this is like the third summer of riots and so forth in Northern Ireland. And, you know, we all say this mustn't happen again, but it doesn't feel as if things are changing. And the idea of Elon Musk, for example, really whipping this up, the whole of the far right are doing this in a very systematic way. It's not happening by accident. It's perfectly planned. You've got Tommy Robinson, Stephen Yaxley-Lennon being in Russia talking to Elon Musk's father, even as he's orchestrating what's happening. So people are being played here as well.
We'll discuss all of this much more in just a moment. But before we came on air, I spoke to the SDLP leader, Claire Hanna, who's the MP for Belfast South. Claire Hanna, I just wanted to begin with what you made of the scenes that we witnessed on the streets of Belfast last night.
I was horrified and terrified for people as well. People will have seen some of those videos of the disorder that sprang up after obviously a very shocking video from North Belfast the night before, but it effectively manifested in mobs in parts of the city, kicking in doors, burning cars, burning buses, you know, public services, and ultimately in some areas going door to door, burning out and attacking homes where they knew or suspected that people of a different colour were being housed. And I know from colleagues who've been supporting residents who were put out of their houses, people from all parts of the world, including, by the way, people who were born and bred in Belfast but happened to have a different colour skin, being targeted. So it was entirely race-based, whatever the original intent of the protest was.
And, you know, children, a 2-month-old baby, were amongst those forced to leave their homes. Must have been terrifying. I mean, what is your message to people who are planning to protest now and tonight?
The thought of little kids being both lifted out of their beds late in the evening and then seeing that, you know, their stuff, you know, how important their toys and stuff are to children, burnt, being unable to go home, and literally dozens of children in Belfast don't know where they're sleeping tonight or are in a community centre or something like that. I mean, the basic humanity of what we're here on this earth to do, if it's not to look after our neighbours. So for those, and I understand the feelings people would have experienced after watching that video, that horrific video the other night. People would feel shock and fear and for some anger. But we've seen this movie before in Northern Ireland in terms of the spill out when people gather in that way, and when masked men and agitated people, unfortunately, it does spill out into this way. So just don't do it. Don't go. If you want to engage on any political issue, you know, do that. Speak to elected representatives who I would hope would start coming forward with proposals, but don't menace and intimidate entirely blameless people, in many cases who are contributing in loads of different ways to our city. Just think of the impact it has on those families.
There's been condemnation from across the political spectrum. Do you think the Prime Minister should convene COBRA, given the severity of the crisis?
Well, look, it's really clear. I mean, the multi-agency response that's needed, and obviously the police have been under pressure, and I think are responding as well as they can. But when protests are in different part of the city, obviously it stretches, and I think that's strategically done by those behind this sort of violence. Look, whatever way the mechanism works. I mean, obviously Northern Ireland has its own governance mechanisms, and it does take all parts contributing. But just, I suppose, it's important that people know that yes, Northern Ireland has its history of violence. You know, violence is not an alien thing, but it's important that I suppose people know that these are part of the same trends around online agitation and manifestation of violence, as well as the traditional Northern Ireland issues as well.
Well, talking about the online incitement. As Ofcom says, some of the violence was incited online. The government's sort of tweaking the Online Safety Act to ensure that platforms like Elon Musk's X remove illegal content more swiftly. Is that an affront to free speech, or actually is the government not doing enough?
I don't think we are doing enough. I think some of these platforms, including with very nefarious intent, have all this power, untrammeled power, without any responsibility and without any accountability. And they've shown, right up to the top brass who owners the platform, have shown their willingness to use and manipulate those platforms for ill intent. We all know that even if you're, whatever you're looking at, within a swipe or two, you go to very dark places and you go to very extreme places, and people, even looking at relatively innocent content, are very quickly seeing stuff that will probably lean into their fears and possibly, their prejudices and their anxieties. And certainly we know that there are those grifters who just go from place to place looking for awful trigger incidents. People who, as I say, couldn't find Belfast on a map and have no idea what communities in our place want and need, who can so easily, reach in and distort a narrative, play on people's fears, and yes, amplify places where protests are going to happen, but probably that sense for some of being part of something. And then they'll move on. Tomorrow they'll be on to the next thing, and communities in my city are left picking up the pieces.
Ofcom does have the capacity to fine people, to even put people in jail. Do you want to start seeing the watchdog making an example of some of these platforms?
It needs to be toothed. I'm not aware. I mean, we've seen the amount of times these platforms, as I say, have been an actor, not just a platform, an accelerant, a player in incidents of violence and disorder like this. I'm not sure of any fines being issued or anybody, who, I say, being brought to account. I'm not aware of how well we're cooperating, because this is a global issue. This is, no one country is going to be able to have the measure of these platforms. But I'm open to being corrected, but I'm not aware of incidents where those powers are properly being used to change behaviour and curtail the influence of these. So
you want to see the powers used and used quickly in this instance of
very clearly. Look, we all, and I'm old enough to remember the really positive impacts of social media and the democratisation in some ways of discourse and people being able to get their message out. But we're not talking about a level playing field. We're not talking about an equality of arms, as I suppose, for messages being out there. We know that some of these, some of the people in control of these platforms very much have their thumb on the scale in terms of the content that people are seeing. We don't know what's being shown to people. We don't know exactly how this is working, but we do know the impact that it's having in constituencies like that I represent, and obviously in the minds of many people as well.
The thing is, Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader, says that people are angry about uncontrolled immigration. He says that people are scared about what's going on in their communities. The vast majority out last night weren't far-right or extremist, he says. He says people like you are, and the media are disconnected from the reality.
I'm connected in my community. I know there's lots of different viewpoints on immigration as any other thing, and people are entitled both to have a view and to bring forward proposals. We don't get a lot of proposals. We don't get a lot of reality and engagement on the trade-offs that are involved. We don't get a lot of attention. The people, including in the political ecosystem that I live in Northern Ireland, a lot of people have a lot to say about immigration, but don't have a lot to say about solutions to the problems of people feeling dislocated, people feeling hopeless, people feeling like they don't have access to housing, people feeling like they don't have access to economic opportunity, and some of the things that seem to be driving some of this sentiment. They're not bringing forward proposals for house building. They're not building forward, proposals for training opportunities for young people. They only want to lean into the fears and the anxieties.
Just finally and briefly, you talked about people protesting online who couldn't even find Belfast on a map. Do you include Elon Musk in that?
Well, I've never heard him say anything about Belfast and about the things we've been through and the needs of our community, and I've never seen him show any interest. So I think there's a pattern of these people, bouncing from place to place, exploiting, as I say, the fears that people legitimately feel when they watch a video like we saw this week, but we neither want nor need it. Thanks very much.
Claire Hannah, thank you very much. Well, the former Education Secretary Gillian Keegan, former Green Party leader Caroline Lucas, here on the sofa still. Caroline, Nigel Farage is saying that the majority of demonstrators are scared about their community. They're worried about immigration. What do you make of that?
Well, we know that they were properly stirred up on social media with people deliberately saying, go out, show this pure cold rage, you know, go and be angry. This was really orchestrated. So I don't doubt there are some people who are worried about their communities and are worried about immigration, but that doesn't excuse what happened last night or a couple of nights ago. And it feels to me, at least, as if many of those people who are out on the streets were just simply thugs who have been stirred up by the far right, who are looking for these moments of tension, of high emotion when something terrible has happened, and are deliberately using it. And I think we just need to be a bit more savvy about the fact that this is not a one-off, sadly, that there is a pattern here of the far right using these moments, like they did with Henry Novak, to really build up more and more anger about individual immigrants who are here.
Is it the far right stirring all of this, or is there actually genuine anger about failures by your government, the Conservatives, and the current government on immigration?
I think there's both. I think people are I think there are definitely, there's a growing concern about immigration, the overall numbers of immigration, and it's not just in our country. You see this in many European countries. I travel a lot. And you do see there's very, very much a similar feeling that the levels have got too far, the cultures have become too disparate. There's been a lot of people who have been coming illegally as well, and that's mounting up over time now. Do you
accept those? I just want to bring you in there. Do you accept those concerns?
I accept that when your community changes very fast in ways that you don't have a say over, that can be quite scary. I absolutely reject the kinds of headlines that we see in much of the right-wing press that suggest that millions of people are coming here on small boats, and if we're not putting up the fortress walls, a million more will come.
Well, but there's
the vast majority of people,
boat, and that is problematic, isn't it?
Tens of thousands by boat.
Yeah. The vast majority of people who are coming are, first of all, people who have legitimate claims for asylum, who can come no other way because we've closed all of the safe routes.
Yeah, but, you know, the Jonathan Hall KC was saying today that, you know, that is part of a problem. That is a potential national security problem because people coming from war-torn countries are going to be affected by that.
So put in place the safe routes. That's exactly the point.
If you had safe routes. No, it doesn't change the people, and it probably increases the number. And both things are happening at the same time. And it's been a cumulative effect. So it's on top of many, many millions. I mean, I remember in the Brexit debate, we thought there was 3 million settled status Europeans here. As it turned out, there was 6.2 million. And then, you know, you add all the other figures. We did have a lot of people that came after. No, but
jump in, Caroline.
In the public's mind, I'm not saying they're all the same, but they're cumulative. There's a cumulative feeling, either because there's not enough housing, or there's not enough access to services, or there's fear because of crime. Take your pick at which bit it's impacting you and why you've got a fear. And it's genuine. And you can't ignore listening to people and their fears. A politician shouldn't do that.
I'm not suggesting we don't listen to people. I absolutely think we should. But I think we should also call out the way in which immigration is being used as the kind of scapegoat by so many politicians to cover up their own failures over many, many years of not building enough social housing, of not being able to address issues around austerity because they've reached for that tool rather than higher taxes for the super rich, for example. So there is a kind of a horrible logic to what we're seeing here, whereby there's been such a failure in order to look after people properly in this country and to make sure that people do have good basic services. And then the very convenient scapegoat for that is immigrants. Many of those immigrants are in work, they're contributing to our society, they are holding up our NHS, and the idea that somehow they are the problem rather than pre-existing economic choices and political choices, I think is wrong.
I hear people say things like, you know, my bit of the country's full. You know, there's literally nowhere to put any more things. And the roads are full, and this is full, etc. And the jobs, where are the jobs coming from? We're worried about jobs for our young people. This is too either or. So, you know, people like Caroline will have her analysis. People like the far right will have their analysis. And actually, there are elements of all of it which are true. And actually listening to people about the current concerns, which is a cumulative impact of lots of these things, not solvable by one single thing. More social housing will not make everyone think,
I didn't
oh,
say
this
one
is
single
great.
thing, did I? Come on, I didn't say one
even
thing.
all
I
the
said a
things
whole
you
range of
listed
things.
wouldn't solve it. Even all the
It
things
would
you
go a
listed.
long
No,
way.
it wouldn't, because there is another factor, which is the other factor, which is also about the cultural aspects and how it's been integrated.
Yeah, and actually,
and Jewish people not feeling safe. There's a lot of other factors.
Okay, well, Caroline, I want to put some of that back to you with a Nigel Farage quote. He reportedly said that Green voters were, and I quote, ethnic minorities, many who don't speak English. I mean, there is this battle going on, isn't there? Labour and the Tories are toughening up their rhetoric, if not their, and their action on immigration. But we're not hearing the Greens really sort of fight back now. What's going on?
Well, I think we're certainly fighting back about the way in which Keir Starmer, for example, is actually trying to out-reform, somehow seeming to think that the best way to deal with the kind of rhetoric about anti-immigration coming from Reform is to start to mimic the same thing himself. And so you have a Labour Party putting out videos on TikTok showing how tough they're being on deportations and so forth. I think for many people that is not the kind of Labour Party they wanted to see. They want to see a humane Labour Party. I'm very proud that the Green Party is absolutely saying that immigrants are welcome, not in an uncontrolled way, but recognising, as I said before, that the vast majority, if you're going to take the small boats issue, of people who come on small boats actually do have a claim for asylum, but they can't pursue it in any other way. But what makes me so sad, and if I could just say this, is that, you know, we're talking about immigration. We're doing exactly what the far right want us to do by obsessing about that, rather than looking at thuggish behaviour being driven by the far right, looking at the way in which they are politicising a tragedy that has happened in Northern Ireland. And it's beautifully convenient for them that we're all going to get more and more hysterical about immigrants.
Again,
That's
both things
what
can
they
be
want.
true.
But
Again,
also,
both things can be true, because people can be concerned, and they are, and it's not just in our country.
And most of them don't go and set fire to their neighbours' homes.
That is true. And by the way, the people who do that are clearly... they've got to take individual responsibility, and the police have to take care of that.
We're going to carry on discussing
both things can be true.
Yeah, we're going to carry on discussing all of this, but I do want to have a quick chat about a breaking story tonight, because the government has effectively conceded that the long-awaited defence investment plan for the UK will not come out this week. Our Security and Defence Editor, Deborah Haynes, is at the Ministry of Defence. Deborah, the timing of this announcement is particularly important, isn't it?
Yes, well, anyone that's interested in UK defence has had one big question: when is the defence investment plan going to be coming out? You'll remember it should have come out last autumn, but there have been disagreements between the Ministry of Defence behind me and the Treasury over the size of the settlement of additional money that the military says that it needs to be able to transform the armed forces at the speed of change to meet the threat that everyone in government says the UK is facing. It had the Strategic Defence Review that was released last June that set out the whole blueprint for this transformation, but we've been waiting in limbo without an agreement on that funding envelope that could finalise the defence plan ever since, and that has been eating into the government's credibility. The expectation or anticipation had been that there could be an announcement on Thursday. Then there was talk that this could happen on Friday, and that prompted the Speaker to say today in Parliament that he would be appalled if the government were to put out such an important document on a day when MPs weren't seating. John Healey then went on to confirm that it wouldn't come out, he wouldn't be respecting Parliament, effectively meaning it's not coming out on Friday. But I understand, though, that the expectation is still that the Prime Minister will make some statement on defence this Friday. I've talked to a couple of sources who are signalling that there's very close to an agreement, if it's not yet there yet, on the actual funding settlement. And in terms of the figures, it's being widely reported that it could be around an extra £13.5 billion, maybe a bit less, over the next 4 years, and that is at the lower end of what the Ministry of Defence had been pushing for from the Treasury. But with all of this, until it's confirmed and until it's public, then it's really hard to know for sure if it's actually going to happen. But John Healey, when he was asked about the plan, he gave a press conference earlier alongside his Australian counterpart and the Foreign Secretary and her Australian counterpart. And he did say that the Prime Minister minister understands what this nation needs when it comes to its armed forces and the money that is being spent on them, and he has been pushing for more. And so, yes, we're expecting some kind of details on Friday, maybe some top-line figures, but then, and this is the crucial thing, the actual defence investment plan, this long-awaited document, it sounds as though that is finally going to come out on Monday. But again, nothing's sure until we see it.
Right. Well, Deborah, thank you very much for bringing us that update. We're actually waiting for a press conference. Mexico City, the FIFA president is about to give a press conference, so we'll take you to that, about the World Cup, obviously, as soon as we get it. It hasn't started yet. Gillian and Caroline are here on the sofa. Gillian, I heard you gasp when you heard Deborah Haynes breaking that news about the Defence Investment Plan being delayed again, but it will probably be next week, probably, hopefully.
It's always probably next week or maybe next week. I mean, you know, the government's showing lots of signs now of paralysis, and this is another one. But I think the bigger issue they have from what we're hearing through the press and a lot of the leaks is that it's about 15 billion short of the minimum that was highlighted as required in the strategic defence review that was done. So I guess when you're spending money in government and when you're putting forward a big plan, you know, what you want is for people to say, fantastic, that's really great, and you know, people to be happy with it. If what you do falls so far short that effectively it's the worst news story that you're going to have that week, then, you know, why would you spend 13.5 billion to be really unpopular? So I think they're really trying to juggle with this. They have to do it properly, and they're incapable of doing it properly because they don't know where they're going to get the money from. They tried cuts, they tried the welfare cuts, then they've tried cutting their departmental spend. Obviously, they didn't try growth because if they had, we might have got some. They tried anti-growth, but, you know, at the end of the day, they're stuck because of all those policies.
Caroline, what's your solution?
Well, I was just about to say, I think under the Conservatives, the amount went down, didn't it, that went into defence?
It did go up to 2.6%.
The government
well, 2.3%.
Yeah.
It went up to 2.3. But, you know, you don't need it if you haven't got a war. When you've got Russia invading Ukraine, and then you've got this, what's happening in Iran.
Yeah, would have been helpful to prepare for it, though. Caroline, where would you get the money from?
What I would like to do is take a step back and talk about security more broadly, because I think it is more than... If we're asking our question about what is it that keeps our country safe, then obviously some of that is conventional military, but also what is some of that is facing some of the real horrors coming down the line at us from climate change and biodiversity loss. And I'm just really exercised by the fact that there's a suppressed report from the Joint Intelligence Committee that finally saw the light of day in January. It should have been published in October. And this Joint Intelligence report is really terrifying in terms of what it says, in terms of whether we're going to be able to feed ourselves quite soon.
Because of climate change?
Because there are 6 critical ecosystems around the world, including the Amazon and the Congo rainforest. And because they are being degraded at such a rate, there are these so-called tipping points where the Amazon could literally turn into a savanna, that it's no longer going to be able to produce the soya that we then feed to our animals that we then eat. And basically, you've got MI5 and MI6 saying that environmental crises are every bit as serious and could have...
but Ed Miliband is getting his way in the cabinet. You should be pleased about that.
I am pleased that he's doing as well as he is. He's getting his way on energy. I think there's got quite a way to go when it comes to nature.
As if people weren't worried enough. As if people weren't worried enough.
Well, I think
now,
how
long is this? Is it in the foreseeable future?
It is indeed in the foreseeable future. I will bring a copy of the Joint Intelligence report next time I see
it. But it needs to be challenged, obviously, because it sounds extreme.
Well, it's MI5 and MI6. It's GCHQ, so it's not Greenpeace. It's not the Green Party. It is the security services who are saying that. And that is why I want to put this on the table too, because before we talk about the envelope of spending, we need to know what the challenges are that we're trying to address.
Pause there, because we're going to head over to Mexico City now without getting in an aeroplane. The FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, is holding a news conference ahead of the World Cup starting tomorrow. There's been lots of media attention over the last few days on ticket prices. And Omar Artan, the Somali referee, denied entry to the United States, stopping him from officiating at the tournament. Let's have a little listen in now.
Welcome, thank you. Welcome to this opening press conference of the World Cup. Just one day away from the opening match here in Mexico City. Thanks to the many hundreds of you who have gathered here and many more joining us online in the media centres across our 16 host cities and beyond. Good to see you all here before the teams and the fans take centre stage With that, I will hand over to the man taking centre stage at the moment, the FIFA President, Gianni Infantino, for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Brian. Muchas gracias. Mi querido Brian, great pleasure for me to be here with you. Hello, everyone. Good morning for this press conference here. ¿Qué pasa? ¿Todo bien? Bien. Bueno. Bienvenidos a todos, bienvenue à tout le monde, willkommen, ahlan wa sahlan, you know how to say it in all the languages. So it's a pleasure to be here today because we are kicking off the 23rd FIFA World Cup. So it's a moment of joy, it's a moment of celebration, it's a moment of happiness, and I am very, very happy to see this ball rolling in a few hours' time. It's put in the right way. And this trophy being awarded in a few weeks' time. The most iconic trophy in the world, the most incredible cup, a trophy and a ball that makes people dream all over the world. And today, I hope we can also speak a little bit about football, because that's what we are here about, right? I know that there are other topics as well, and we will definitely also touch on them, but I would like to ask you to really focus on football. So let me start by saying a few things. The first one is that there is an empty seat here in this room today. Il y a une chaise vide dans cette salle. And this empty seat is for a French journalist, Christophe Glaise, who is the only sports journalist who is detained in the world. And of course he has an accreditation, and of course he has his seat here for him. And I've invited his parents to a game, France-Senegal. But I hope, I really hope, that in a great act of humanity, he will be given grace, the presidential grace, and can even join us here during the World Cup.
Well, we're going to leave that FIFA press conference just now. We'll bring you any breaking news from that as we have it. But just returning to today's agenda, and as we've been hearing, the government has said it's intending to update the Online Safety Act to require social media services to act more quickly to remove illegal content during what it's calling times of crisis. The Science and Technology Secretary Liz Kendall is also asking Ofcom to speak urgently to X and other platforms about how they'll comply with the Act. So a very good day to have a chat with Jimmy Wales, the Wikipedia co-founder, who of course had plenty to say about online safety, freedom of speech and the rise of AI. Let's take a listen. Jimmy Wales, the internet feels like a pretty angry space at the moment. When you look at Elon Musk, for example, being accused of whipping up division, the brutal video of the Belfast stabbing was aired online, and then there was violence on the streets of Belfast, of course. How far removed do you think it all is from the ideals, of the pursuit of knowledge and truth with which you set up Wikipedia 25 years ago?
Yeah, well, I mean, pretty far removed. I mean, certainly, the idea of Wikipedia is for everyone to come together, to share knowledge, to have a free encyclopedia for everyone on the planet that's neutral, high quality, and so forth. And so that dream is still my dream. It's still what we do at Wikipedia.
That dream's not over then?
That dream's not over. No, we're still plugging away. And the thing to remember as well is people everywhere are basically pretty nice. And I think that's something that is getting distorted because the way social media algorithms tend to promote more divisive content. If you go on social media and you start trolling, you'll get more attention and so on and so forth. And I mean, if you're really good at it, you might become president of the United States.
I sort of bridled a bit when you said people are basically pretty nice because, there seems to be so much sort of hatred out there, but you're still... Are you hopelessly naive or just idealistic?
Yes, both, yes. But, somebody just recently on Elon's site said to me something like, you're a... X. I call it Twitter, and I always correct myself on X. Said, you're a horrible, disgusting human being. And I just thought, I just answered back, you're a gentleman and a scholar. But I just thought, people aren't like that. Like, that is not a normal way that people behave. That onlineness, I think, is a problem for a lot of people. But also, the bigger problem is if people in positions of influence and authority are not calling for calm, reflective discussion and debate, then that isn't helping either. Like, that's actually making things much worse.
So MPs, for example, who are, sort of going along with some of what Elon Musk is saying?
Yeah, potentially. Certainly, saying people should protest, right? That's fine, broadly, intellectually. People do have a right to protest, and they should protest if there's something they don't like, but not riot, not at a moment of crisis. It's not the right thing to say at that moment. It's to say, right now, if you disagree with policy, you need to start getting organized, and you need to organize a protest for next month, right? It's not about going out in the streets today and causing more violence. That's just terrible. So, but there we are.
Although, to be fair, Rupert Lowe, the MP perhaps with the biggest internet reach, has said, protest but don't resort to violence, be calm.
That's important, yeah.
I was laughing really at the insult that you say you'd got on X because that seems quite tame to me because I've been sort of fending off death threats and so on.
Yes.
But don't people go online now to be sort of angry or upset, and the algorithms sort of feed that? So what do you do about that in your vision of the world?
Yeah, I'm not sure they go on to do that. They go on, and that is the environment, that's the culture, that's what happens to them. And it's not true of everywhere online. Certainly, today there are loads and loads of really sweet, nice places online and lovely people. And
where are they?
I think Reddit is a good example. Reddit's an enormous, sprawling message board. It has some horrible places, but it has some really, really sweet, amazing places where, one of my favorites, there's a subreddit about personal finance, and a lot of times it's young people saying, my alcoholic father has used my name and made credit cards. Do I have to pay this? What do I have to do? And all these lovely people are like, no, here's what you do. You don't have to pay it. Here's how you complain. I'm like, this is great. These are complete strangers turning out, as we know people will. We know this about any kind of an emergency situation. People do come out. They try and help each other. People are basically, can be very positive. It's just we see more of that negativity because it's promoted by really badly done algorithms.
You mentioned Elon Musk, and obviously the Prime Minister has himself accused Elon Musk of whipping up some division in the country, and we've seen that on the streets of Belfast as well. How do you handle Musk? How would you, the Prime Minister, handle Musk? He's targeted you and accused you of bias and so on.
Yeah, my approach is always, if you accuse us of bias, we should say, okay, maybe we are. Let's check. Let's figure it out. Let's take that seriously and see, is there something we can improve? If not, then not, right? If so, then okay. If, on the other hand, it's just being mean and being obnoxious, I just ignore it. Now, I'm not sure the Prime Minister can, right?
Yeah.
Because
So what should the PM do?
That's a very good question. Certainly, I think responding very clearly, as the Prime Minister has, like, these attacks are horrific, and this response is not okay. Like, those are important things to say. Beyond that, I think it's really hard to know what to do.
Well, it's interesting in this vein that the Technology Secretary, Liz Kendall, has just announced today that next week the government will lay in Parliament an update to the Online Safety Act, requiring services to take quicker action to remove illegal content circulating during times of crisis. Is that a smart move by the government or not?
I think sort of asking for quicker action is important. My question would be, what do we mean by illegal content, right? if we go across into actually just suppressing dissent at times of crisis, that's not great. But I'm a big fan of slower, more reflective discourse in society, and in an emergency situation, that's a slightly different case.
Well, at the moment, the laws, there are laws against spreading hate online if they're intended to stir up hatred based on race and religion. I mean, it would seem that some of the stuff we've seen online crosses that boundary, doesn't it?
Probably, yes.
Given there are, laws in this country now that, some of the, depending on your perspective, the UK is leading the way on regulating the internet. Does some of what you're seeing on X cross a line there?
Well, I'm not a UK legal expert, so I can't really say for sure. I don't know. I am a big First Amendment type of person. I think freedom of expression is incredibly important. I think things that might cross the line here definitely would not cross the line in the US, and I think the US is more in the right in that instance. At the same time, asking what should the law do or what should the police do, which in this country has been far too often arresting people for commentary online that normally you would just say, well, that was obnoxious, but really, do you need the cops to show up? But at the same time, it's like, that doesn't make the commentary okay. That doesn't mean that it's okay for someone in a position of great influence or responsibility to foment sort of more anger, more potentially violence and things like that. So without approving it, I'm just saying, I'm not so sure that regulation of speech is a very good thing to do. And I say this from experience, knowing, we have Wikipedians who are just being Wikipedians who are in jail in Saudi Arabia and other places, in hiding in Russia. Like the risks of regulating speech are actually quite high as well, and we need to be very, very careful not to go there.
I mean, that's such a good point. But I suppose the counter-argument to some of what you're saying, what do you do with this? Given the scale of online abuse and, harms, and we're looking at harms to children and so on, there has been damage done to the fabric of society. What do you do about that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a lot of what is being blamed on social media is actually blaming the public. If public are angry about something, maybe the real answer is to say, well, let's think about why they're angry. Let's think about what we can do to improve it. Now, that doesn't mean social media has no responsibility in the whole thing, but I do think, we need to be really serious about unemployment. We need to be really serious about young people's concerns about the cost of housing. Like, these are the things that are fundamentally more deep and actually more enduring in terms of building a better society.
So banning social media for under 16s, as the government is contemplating, you don't think that's the answer? The answer is to find out why under 16s are so miserable?
I think so, yeah. And I think, I'm a big proponent that the government should be educating parents that parental controls exist. They're really good. I have teenage daughters. Their phones are on parental controls. They have to ask which apps they can use and so on and so forth. We have adult conversations about this with them, about what, how to deal with things online and so on and so forth. That's really, really important. But we also need to sort of trust young people to say, look, you know what, like, young people need to explore the world. They need to watch things on TV that are maybe a little mature for them. That's part of growing up.
And that's not letting tech companies off the hook?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think it's tech companies' job to be the parents of teenagers.
Let's talk about AI, because, OpenAI originally launched as a non-profit, committed to sharing research and code openly to ensure that AI benefited humanity. Real parallel there with your aims in launching Wikipedia. Do you lament the shift in purpose? Do you think, how dangerous do you think AI is?
I'm not concerned that much about the dangers of AI. I mean, I have to respect, people like Demis Hassabis of Google DeepMind. When people are sounding some cautionary notes, you can't just ignore that. But I'm not that concerned about it. I definitely would say, with the shift of OpenAI, definitely their shift away from openness to being more closed, I think is problematic. The shift from non-profit to for-profit, that's way so complicated. I don't really quite understand what they did there or why. I do understand, like, it's actually quite hard to build AI as a non-profit. You can't get donations for tens or hundreds of billions of dollars to build, the machinery to do it. So they did need a way to get capital if they're going to actually pursue this. But I don't think they should stray from their mission. And I think all of the AI companies, they talk about it, and I think some of them are doing better than others. But I do think this idea of AI for Good. I've just come from a lunch about AI for Good with Tim Berners-Lee and others. Is to say, look, this is this amazing revolutionary breakthrough, and it is being used in incredible ways for science. You know, the AlphaFold, protein folding, revolutionizing biology, drug discovery. Driverless cars is going to save, you know, tens of millions of lives. All of these amazing things are there. We need to use AI for all of these amazing things, and not just for making, you know, sort of funny cat videos. I love a funny cat video, by the way, but you know, we need to be serious about it. We need to say, okay, look, this is a great opportunity in technology, just as we've had many, many in the past, that, you know, technology can be used for good or ill. You know, Marie Curie and the discovery of radium and radiation. Well, that led to amazing, you know, scientific discoveries and so on and so forth, that also led to nuclear weapons, right? And so we need to think about these things now and say, okay, how do we make sure that we are really focused on using this to sort of build a better society, build a better planet?
I wonder if AI is putting Wikipedia out of business. And I actually went to a Wikipedia page today on predictions on the end of Wikipedia. And it says that recent developments with artificial intelligence in Wikimedia projects have prompted new predictions that AI applications, which consume free and open content, will replace Wikipedia. Have you seen a drop in visits to Wikipedia pages?
We've seen about an 8% drop in human visits. We've seen an increase in total visits because the bots are visiting quite a lot. Wow. What does that actually mean? It's very hard to say. I mean, we are, because we're a charity and we're not funded by advertising, an 8% drop in visits doesn't mean an 8% drop in revenue. So we're okay there. People do remember, like, people love Wikipedia and they're like, oh, I want to chip in. But yeah, in the long run, we do think a lot about this. Like, are volunteers motivated? Are things happening? We're not really concerned right now about AI replacing Wikipedia, because in many ways the hallucination problem is still just terrible. You know, it's like the errors are very common. That's particularly true the more obscure topic that you look into. You know, if you ask a basic question to Google these days, the AI summaries, they're pretty good. But if you ask an obscure question, it's far more likely to get it wrong, and that's where we really shine. That, you know, knowledge is human, and our community is quite passionate, and I mean, we're like super nerds trying to dig into everything and figure out what we can. And so for now, we're not seeing that. In 25 more years, this is the 25th birthday of Wikipedia this year, 25 more years, I think it's really hard to say.
You might not be here in 25 years.
We'll be here because we're a bunch of nerds and we write encyclopedia because we enjoy it and it's our hobby. But you know, will people be using AI in much the way they've been using Wikipedia? I'm not sure.
So just finally then, sort of standing back, you know, is AI going to transform work? Is it going to devastate jobs? Is it going to provide new jobs? How big a moment is this in our history, this tech revolution that we're in?
I think it's as big as the internet, as big as the mobile phone, and probably bigger than either of those. And
the Industrial Revolution, though, not as big as that?
It's in that category, right? It's fundamentally important, and I think it will lead to both. It will devastate jobs and it will create jobs. I think we'll see, you know, overall, on the whole, in the long run, you know, we'll see new kinds of work, new kinds of activities that people do, and that's great. I also think we'll see the disappearance of certain kinds of work which are really not suitable for humans anyway, and I think that's exciting, and I think we'll see a lot more prosperity. Now, exactly what that looks like, I don't know. I mean, somebody said something recently, and I don't have an opinion about this, but I thought that's a really insightful way to look at it. If we say there's going to be 40% unemployment, that sounds terrible. If we say there's going to be a 3-day work week, that sounds pretty good, right? And those are the same numbers, right? So what are we really thinking about? What is life going to be like? I think it is a big shift, and it's coming very, very fast. And so certain categories of jobs, like long-haul truck driving, seem destined to go away very, very quickly. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who are doing long-haul truck driving aren't prepared for this. We aren't thinking enough about reskilling, all of this. And so when those people find themselves suddenly out of work, that's going to cause a big social disruption, even if we think in the long run, actually human creativity, the brilliance of every human being, human dignity, basically sitting and driving for hundreds of miles every day isn't really a life of, you know, sort of Aristotelian wonderfulness, right? It's a job, and it's a perfectly good job, and it's going to go away. And we do need to think about what happens next.
But fundamentally, you think AI is a force for good, as the internet has been a force for good in your optimistic view of the world?
In my pathologically optimistic view, that's right, yes.
Well, you know what? It's very refreshing talking to a pathological optimist. Thank you very much. Jimmy Wales, it's been great.
Lovely.
You know, we've spent so much time in the last few days considering the sort of darker corners of the internet. It was so good to be reminded by Jimmy that tech can be such a force for good. You know, whether it's Reddit giving practical advice to people or the prospects from AI, it's really refreshing to hear that. In that vein, he doesn't think the government should ban social media for under 16s. But he freely admits that he doesn't have the answers to some of these problems that tech throws up. Now, if you're the Prime Minister and you're dealing with these challenges, you kind of have to. Well, Gillian and Caroline are still here with me. Caroline, I mean, he didn't have the answers, for example, on Elon Musk. He says ignore him, but, you know, the Prime Minister can't do that. You're exercised about this, aren't you?
I am exercised about this. I'd love to know what makes him so calm, because whatever it is, I'd like a
You want a bit of it.
But,
you might have to live in a particular state.
But I do think that what we're seeing here is quite frankly Elon Musk deliberately working with the far right to stir up an incitement to violence, and that seems to me to be so serious that the idea that he's just being a bit mean, I think was the word he used, or a bit obnoxious. No, he's doing something much, much more serious, and we should be taking real action. And certainly anybody who's on Twitter who's stirring up the kind of hatred that then leads to violence, and they're asking for it to lead to violence, they should be charged. That should be an offence.
It is inciting violence, and that is illegal.
Well, I mean, I'm sure Elon Musk would deny that is what he's doing, but, you know, and he's a trillionaire, so I don't think the government's going to go after him that aggressively after all, and he's not in this country either. They should. They should put Elon Musk in jail.
Well, it would send a strong... I mean, I don't know whether or not...
By the way, it doesn't probably pass that bar.
I don't think prison is probably, unfortunately, the appropriate charge for him, but he is inciting violence and hatred. And to my mind, that means he should have some penalty for sure.
Well, let me bring you some live pictures now from Belfast, because it does appear as if, again, we're looking at potentially some disturbances. You can't see anything there. There is some sort of fresh disorder going on. You can't really see it from those pictures, but we'll keep you abreast of that. Gillian, you know, just a brief final thought on the sort of this. Is social media reflecting our divisions, or is it exacerbating them?
I think it is probably exacerbating them, because you can all come together in one place, people of like mind, so it probably does become polarised, and you can see the polarisation more clearly.
Well, thank you both for joining me on the sofa. Gillian Keegan, Caroline Lucas. Loads more to come with Sarah Jane Mee next, but that is just about it from me tonight. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again tomorrow at 7 p.m.